me begin with a simple thought. Life does not get better by chance. It gets better by change. Now that's not dramatic, it's not fancy, but it's true. And the most important change you'll ever make is not changing your job, your city, your friends, or even your income. The most important change is changing how you think. Changing your personal philosophy. You see, all of us arrive at the future carrying the philosophy we've been practicing. If you don't like where you are, don't complain about the address. Check the direction. Think about that for a moment. The future is not some mysterious place you accidentally fall into. It's where your current habits are taking you. Now, the title says something about 5 goals that can make 2026 your best year. But before we talk about goals, we have to talk about the thinker who sets them. Because goals don't work on people, people work on goals. And if you don't work on the person, the goals won't stick. I used to think success was something you chased. I really did. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed busy enough, ran fast enough, something good would eventually bump into me. Until I learned something simple. Success is not pursued. It is attracted by the person you become. That changed everything for me. Changed how I woke up in the morning, changed what I read, changed what I tolerated, changed what I tolerated, changed what I expected from myself. Now, let's talk about personal philosophy, that quiet collection of ideas you live by, the stuff you never wrote down but you practice every day. Your philosophy determines whether you blame or take responsibility, whether you grow or stay the same, whether you plant in the spring or complain in the fall. Here's what I learned the hard way. If you don't design your philosophy, you'll inherit one. From your parents, your environment, your past disappointments. And inherited philosophies are usually unexamined. They sound like this: that's just the way I am. Or people like us don't get ahead. Or maybe next year will be better. Well, hope is not a strategy. It's a good thing, but it's not a strategy. Now, let me tell you a little story. I once met a farmer who complained every year about his harvest. Same speech. Too much rain, not enough rain, government problems, market problems. And finally I asked him, what about the seed? He looked at me like I'd insulted his family. He said, seed is fine. And that's when it hit me. He never questioned the one thing he could control. And that's what most people do with their lives. They curse the seasons, but never adjust their philosophy. Because here's the truth. The seasons will never change to suit you. Winter will always be winter. Spring will always be spring. You cannot negotiate with January. You cannot plead with August. But you can learn how to dress in winter, plant in spring, cultivate in summer, and harvest in fall. And life is exactly like that. There are winters in life, times when it seems nothing is growing. Money is tight, motivation is low, progress is slow. And here's the danger. Thinking winter means failure. It doesn't. Winter is simply preparation time. It's the season where character is built, patience is learned, and roots grow deeper where nobody can see them. The morning discovered where nobody can see them. I used to curse my winters until I learned that winter sharpens you. If there were no winters, we'd be spoiled. We'd never learn strength. We'd never learn gratitude. So when winter comes, and it will, don't quit. Just change your strategy. Read more, learn more, reflect more. Because winter is not forever. Then comes spring, opportunity, new ideas, fresh starts. But spring is tricky because spring makes promises it doesn't automatically keep. Spring says if you plant now, you can harvest later, but you have to plant. Hope without action is just a wish. and wishes don't grow crops. Some people admire spring. They say, "Isn't this beautiful?" and they never plant a thing. Then they wonder why fall is empty. Don't admire opportunity. Seize it. Then comes summer. That's the season of protection and discipline. You've planted, now you have to guard it. Weeds grow faster than crops. Neglect grows faster than progress. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is simply choosing what you want most over what you want now. And here's one of the great truths of life. We all suffer from one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. I used to avoid discipline. I thought it was restrictive. Until I realized discipline gives you freedom. The disciplined reader becomes free from ignorance. The disciplined saver becomes free from panic. The disciplined learner becomes free from limitation. And then comes fall, harvest time, results. And here's the brutal truth. You don't get paid for intentions. You get paid for results. You don't get paid for reading books. You get paid for what the books help you become. And fall never lies. It tells you exactly what you planted, how well you tended it, and whether you stayed the course. Now, all of this brings us to goals. Because goals are not about the future as much as they are about the present. They pull you forward. They shape your daily decisions. They give discipline a reason. Let me give you the first goal that can make 2026 extraordinary. Decide to work harder on yourself than you do on anything else. I used to work very hard on my job. Long hours, busy days, and I stayed broke. Then someone said something that rearranged my thinking. If you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. Not just money, fortune in skills, fortune in wisdom, fortune in confidence. Your income will rarely exceed your personal development. That's not punishment, that's fairness. Value determines reward, and the marketplace pays for value. So make it a goal to become more valuable by the end of 2026 than you are today. Read more books, listen to better ideas, learn from people who know more than you do, and don't be embarrassed to be a student. The day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. Now here's the next part. Discipline your daily habits. Success is not a single act. It's a lifestyle. It's what you do when no one is watching. It's the small things done consistently, and here's the miracle. Small disciplines practiced daily lead to big results over time. That's how it works. People ask, how long will it take? I say, longer than you want, shorter than you fear, but only if you stay consistent. I used to underestimate small habits until I learned that neglect starts small too. Skipping a day, postponing a decision, letting standards slide. And one day you wake up and say, how did I get here? You didn't fall, you drifted. So set a better sail. You don't need the wind to change, you need direction. The same wind blows on everyone. It's not the breeze that determines your destination. It's how you set your sail. Now let me tell you a little story. I once knew a man who said, I don't need goals. I just take life as it comes. And life took him exactly where he was headed. Nowhere special. Goals are not chains, they are guides. They help you say no to distractions and yes to priorities. Which brings me to another goal. Develop your character. Skills can get you paid once. Character gets you paid for life. Reputation is built in silence. Integrity is who you are when it costs you something. And life has a funny way of testing that. You won't always be rewarded immediately for doing the right thing, but you'll always pay eventually for doing the wrong thing. Character is long-term thinking. I used to think success was about personality. Turns out it's about principle. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be flashy. You just have to be consistent. Here's another goal. Commit to self-education. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. And fortune, again, is not just money. It's options. It's confidence. It's perspective. Read biographies. Learn from history. Study philosophy. Learn how money works. Learn how people work. Learn how you work. Because the more you understand, the less life surprises you. Now let's go a little deeper. Lifestyle. Your lifestyle is the outward expression of your inner philosophy. How you spend your time, who you spend it with, what you tolerate, what you celebrate. Make it a goal to raise your standards. Not your hopes, your standards. Hope says, I wish. Standards say, I don't accept less. I used to accept things I shouldn't have. Poor results, weak excuses, low energy. Until I learned that what you tolerate, you invite, and what you invite, you eventually normalize. And finally, results. Results are not the goal, they're the evidence. Evidence of discipline, evidence of philosophy, evidence of growth. And results compound, just like neglect compounds. So if 2026 is going to be your best year, don't wait for motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Discipline stays. Philosophy stays. Habits stay. Ask yourself this question: what simple disciplines could I start practicing daily that would change everything in a year? Reading 10 pages, writing goals weekly, reflecting nightly, saving a little, learning consistently. Think about that for a moment, because in the end, life doesn't ask for your opinion. It responds to your actions. And you don't have to be extraordinary to get extraordinary results. You just have to be consistent with the fundamentals. So set a better sail, adjust your philosophy, respect the seasons, practice discipline, build character, and become a person of value. And one day you'll look back and say, I'm glad I started when I did. Because the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And that's how you make a year not just successful, but meaningful. And let me stay with you a little longer, because this is usually the point in a live seminar where people nod, take a few notes, and then quietly go back to the same routines. And I don't want that for you. I want this to sink in so deeply that a year from now you don't remember the speech. You remember the results. You see, information alone doesn't change lives. Insight does. And insight usually comes when you sit with an idea long enough for it to challenge you. So let's sit with this. Most people underestimate what can happen in 1 year, and they wildly underestimate what happens when philosophy finally shifts. The moment your inner conversation changes, your outer behavior starts adjusting. You don't have to force it, it happens naturally. I used to say things like, I'll start when I feel ready. Until I learn something important. You don't get ready, you decide. Readiness is a myth. Decision is power. And once you decide, your behavior starts lining up behind that decision. Now let me tell you a little story. I once met a man who said, I've been thinking about changing my life for years. Years. I asked him, what year did you start thinking? He laughed. But here's the tragedy. Thinking without action is entertainment. It makes you feel productive without producing anything. That's why goals matter. Goals are not fantasies. They're commitments to direction. They force you to answer hard questions like, what do I want? And what am I willing to become to get it? And here's something else I learned. You don't really change until the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. Most people wait too long. They wait for life to push them instead of choosing to pull themselves forward. So if you feel a little uncomfortable right now, that's good. Discomfort is often the sound of growth knocking. Now let's talk about responsibility. This is where things get quiet in the room. Because responsibility is empowering, but it's also demanding. It says, whatever happens next, I'm involved. I used to blame circumstances, the economy, the system, the weather, the government, until I learned that blaming is a confession of powerlessness. The moment you accept responsibility, you regain control. And responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means everything is your assignment. That's a big difference. You didn't create all your problems, but you're responsible for solving them. Think about that for a moment. If you don't like your results, you don't need a new calendar. You need a new strategy. And strategy starts with philosophy. Now here's the next layer. Goals are not just about what you want to have. They're about who you want to become. That's why shallow goals don't last. I want more money is weak unless it's connected to growth. I want to become more disciplined, more skilled, more valuable. Now that has roots. I used to set goals that were too small, not because I lacked ambition, but because I underestimated myself. And that's another trap. Playing small doesn't protect you from failure. It just guarantees regret. So one of the goals that will make 2026 your best year is to aim higher in personal growth. Not perfection, progress, measured, consistent progress. Now let me shift gears for a moment and talk about daily life. Because philosophy is not proven in big moments, it's proven on ordinary days. Tuesday afternoons, quiet mornings, tired evenings. That's where discipline lives. Discipline is doing what you said you would do long after the mood you set it in has passed. And moods are unreliable. They change with the weather. Discipline stays. I used to wait until I felt inspired to do the hard things. That's backward. Inspiration follows action, not the other way around. You act first, and motivation shows up late, apologizing. And here's the good news. You don't have to overhaul your life in a week. You just have to start the right direction and keep walking. A small change in direction today can lead to a massive difference over time. That's the miracle of the compound effect. Tiny improvements, repeated daily, quietly build an extraordinary life. And neglect works the same way. Tiny lapses, repeated daily, quietly dismantle one. So choose your pain carefully. Now let's talk about value. Because ultimately, income follows value. Opportunities follow value. Influence follows value. The marketplace is brutally honest. It pays you in exact proportion to the problems you solve. If you solve small problems, you get small rewards. Solve bigger problems, bigger rewards. Solve people problems, leadership problems, systems problems. Now you're talking about significant value. So one of your goals for 2026 should be to ask this question regularly. How can I become more useful? Not busier, useful. Busy people are everywhere. Valuable people are rare. Just to confuse activity with progress. They are not the same. Motion does not guarantee movement. A rocking chair moves a lot and goes nowhere. So evaluate your days, not by how full they are, but by how aligned they are. Now, here's something else that matters. Environment. Your environment doesn't determine your future, but it does influence it. Who you listen to, what you watch, what you tolerate, what you laugh at, what you excuse. I used to underestimate environment until I noticed that when I changed what I listened to, my thinking changed. When my thinking changed, my decisions changed. And when my decisions changed, my life changed. So guard your mind. It's the control center. Feed it well. And don't be afraid to outgrow people. Growth creates distance sometimes. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You can still love people without letting them steer your direction. Now let me bring this back to the year ahead. 2026 will come whether you prepare or not. The calendar doesn't ask for permission. The question is, will you arrive stronger, wiser, more disciplined, or will you arrive the same? Same habits, same excuses, same results. And here's the sobering part. Time doesn't reward intention. It rewards action. And time is neutral. It gives everyone the same 24 hours and then steps back to see what you do with them. So make this the year you become intentional about what you read, about how you think, about what you allow, about who you're becoming. Set goals that stretch you, goals that require you to grow, goals that demand discipline. Because easy goals don't change you. And remember this, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Quitting is the real enemy. You can stumble and still win. You can adjust and still arrive. But you can't quit and complain. Let me take this a little deeper now, and I want to anchor these ideas to something timeless. Because philosophy is powerful, but when philosophy is anchored to truth, it becomes unshakable. Long before modern success teaching ever existed, these principles were already written down, tested, and proven in the pages of Scripture. There's a line that says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." That's Proverbs 23:7. Think about that for a moment. It doesn't say, "As a man wishes," or "as a man hopes," but "as he thinks." Your life keeps showing up as evidence of your dominant thoughts. Your bank account, your relationships, your habits, none of them are random. They are mirrors. I used to read verses like that quickly, almost casually, until I realized something uncomfortable. If my results were poor, then my thinking needed improvement. That's not condemnation, that's opportunity. And Scripture is full of this idea of personal responsibility. It says in Galatians 6:7, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows." That's not harsh. That's fair. Sowing is choice. Reaping is consequence. And the law works whether you understand it or not. Now, let me tell you a little story. I once met someone who said, "I'm praying for a better life." That's a good prayer. But then I asked, what are you planting? Because prayer does not cancel principles. Faith does not replace discipline. In fact, real faith expresses itself through action. James says it plainly. Faith without works is dead, not weak, dead. Meaning motionless. Meaning nothing happens. And that brings us right back to seasons. Ecclesiastes 3 says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. That verse changed how I interpreted delays. It taught me that delay is not denial, it's often development. I used to panic in winter seasons. Times when doors closed, money slowed down, recognition disappeared. Until I learned that God often does his deepest work in hidden seasons. Isaiah talks about roots growing downward before fruit grows upward. That's not poetic language. That's a pattern. Joseph had a dream, but he didn't step into the palace the next day. There was a pit season, a prison season, a forgotten season, but every season was preparing him for stewardship. If Joseph had reached authority without character, the dream would have destroyed him. So here's a goal worth setting for 2026. Respect the season you're in. Don't despise it, learn from it, ask, what is this season developing in me? Because promotion without preparation always produces collapse. Now let's talk again about discipline, because Scripture doesn't treat discipline as optional. Hebrews 12 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace. Notice the word later. Discipline pays late, but it pays well. I used to want immediate results, immediate feedback, immediate reward. But God is a long-term thinker. He thinks in harvests, not impulses. And harvest always requires patience. Jesus himself said, whoever is faithful with little will be faithful with much. That verse exposes a common mistake. People say, if I had more, I'd do better. Scripture says the opposite. Do better with what you have, and more will come. So don't wait for bigger opportunities to become disciplined. Practice discipline where you are. Show up on time, keep your word, finish what you start. Those are spiritual principles as much as they are practical ones. Now let's talk about goals again, but from a biblical perspective. Habakkuk says, write the vision and make it plain. Not think it, not talk about it, write it. Writing brings clarity, clarity brings focus, focus brings momentum. I used to keep goals in my head. They floated around, competing with distractions. Writing them down forced me to confront them. Forced me to ask, do I really want this? Or do I just like the idea of it? And here's another important insight. Scripture never condemns ambition. It refines it. Proverbs says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. Plans, diligence, abundance. That's a sequence. But the Bible also warns us about empty busyness. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. That doesn't mean don't build. It means build with alignment, build with wisdom, build with purpose. So another goal for 2026 is alignment. Align your goals with values. Align your effort with purpose. Align your habits with who you're called to become. Now let me pause here and ask you something. Are you becoming more disciplined or just more tired? There's a difference. One leads to progress, the other leads to burnout. Jesus often withdrew to quiet places, not because he was lazy, but because renewal is part of productivity. Even Scripture teaches rest as a principle. Rest is not quitting, it's maintenance. Now let's talk about character again, because Scripture places enormous emphasis here. Proverbs says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. That tells you something. Wealth without character is dangerous. Influence without integrity is destructive. I used to think success would fix my weaknesses. It doesn't. It exposes them. Whatever you are before success, you become more of after success. That's why character development cannot be postponed. David was anointed king long before he ever wore the crown. And what did he do in between? He learned faithfulness in obscurity. He fought lions when no one was watching. He wrote psalms in caves. That's where leaders are made. So don't rush visibility, develop depth. Now let's talk about self-education again, because Scripture honors wisdom relentlessly. It says, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. Not money first, not fame first, wisdom first. And wisdom doesn't just fall on you, you pursue it. Proverbs says, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge. Acquires. That's intentional. I used to wait for someone to teach me. Then I realized mature people teach themselves. They seek counsel. They read. They listen. They observe. Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Freedom follows understanding. Ignorance is expensive. To make learning a lifelong habit, not for applause, for growth. Now, let's bring this to lifestyle. Romans says, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformation doesn't begin with behavior, it begins with thinking. That's why mind renewal is not optional. Your lifestyle will always drift toward your strongest influences. If you don't choose them intentionally, they'll be chosen for you. And here's something else Scripture teaches clearly: stewardship. Everything you have is on loan. Time, energy, ability, opportunity. And Scripture says it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. Not flashy, faithful. So manage your time, manage your resources, manage your energy. Because wasted potential is a quiet tragedy. Now let me slow this down and bring it home. If 2026 is going to be your best year, it won't be because circumstances magically improved. It will be because you improved. You thought better. You disciplined yourself. You respected seasons. You grew in wisdom. You built character. You aligned your life with truth. And here's the beautiful promise of Scripture. Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. That means effort is not ignored. Sacrifice is not forgotten. Faithfulness is always rewarded. If not immediately, then inevitably. So don't quit in winter. Don't neglect spring. Don't get lazy in summer. And don't complain in fall. Set your sail. Do your part. Trust the process. And one day when you look back, you won't just say, that was my best year. You'll say, that's when I became a better person. And that, according to Scripture, is success. So when it gets hard, and it will, don't ask, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? That question turns pain into progress. Let me slow down here. If you work on your philosophy, your habits will follow. If your habits change, your character strengthens. If your character strengthens, your lifestyle improves. And if your lifestyle improves, results eventually show up. That's the order. Skip the order and you get frustration. Respect the order and you get momentum. So here's my encouragement to you as you think about making 2026 your best year. Don't wish for less challenge. Wish for more wisdom. Don't wish for less pressure. Wish for more skill. Don't wish life were easier. Decide to become better. Because when you become better, life responds. And one day, maybe quietly, maybe suddenly, you'll realize something has changed. You're calmer, more confident, more focused, less reactive, more intentional. And you'll smile and think it worked. Not magic, not luck, philosophy, discipline, time. And that's how a good year becomes a great year, and how a great year becomes a great life.